So the Gaza ceasefire deal is set to become a reality, and hopefully this will bring an end to the 15-month genocide of Palestinians by Israeli terrorists. As soon as the ceasefire deal was announced, war criminals like Joe Biden and Anthony Blinken had rushed with lightning speed to take credit as they blamed Hamas for the delay in reaching this deal. I was the first to expose their lies earlier this week with my video, and you can watch that video here. However, now more details have emerged that conclusively prove that genocidal Joe and barbaric Blinken were simply not interested in ending the Israeli genocide. They appeared to enjoy the specter of Palestinians' massacres using US-supplied bombs. These two morally corrupt, mentally deranged, depraved to the core, and crooks of first order willfully misled their own people in the US and the public at large around the world. That's because what I'm about to share with you will leave you dumbfounded. It will shock you when you learn the extent to which these two Zionist war criminals, namely Biden and Blinken, had gone in their desperation to help Israel commit war crimes in Gaza. When Biden and Blinken told us that it was they who struck the deal, their claims simply didn't stack up. And you don't have to be Rifat Javed from Janata Ka Reporter to conclude that. Anyone who followed the goings-on of the last 15 months would have seen the true deviant colors of these two war criminals. The Gaza conflict showed us that not only was Biden a bloodthirsty Zionist, but also a Democrat who relished the sight of babies being mercilessly killed with American bombs. As for Blinken, even my 4-year-old would have found it hard to trust anything that this slimy Israeli diplomat said. That's right, he served his country Israel very well in the last 15 months. Now let's return to the inside story of how this deal was reached. On 7th of January, when Trump addressed the media, he issued a chilling warning saying that all hell would break loose if the hostages weren't back by the time he took office on 20th of January. He also said that it will not be a good news for Hamas and it will not be good news for anyone. In the same press conference, Trump also introduced a man called Steve Witkoff, who he had appointed as his envoy to speak to parties in the Middle East. Witkoff told reporters two important things, and that should have given us a clear indication about which way the ceasefire deal was heading to. Witkoff said that he will have a good news by the time Trump is inaugurated as the new US president, and what was helping him achieve this deal was Trump's reputation and what he has said. What he meant by that was Trump's no-nonsense reputation and his promise to end the war.
February 20th, or is that something that's likely to happen, if there's a deal even at all? We've been hearing this now for the better part of...
I know. I would say...
They better be.
Right. I would say that the president is exasperated. I don't want to talk for him, but look, I don't know anyone who delegates better than President Trump. He gives us a lot of authority to speak on his behalf, and he exhorts us to speak emphatically. And emphatically means you better get it, you better do this, because the alternative...
Do you think they're waiting for President Trump to take office?
No, I think they heard him loud and clear. Better get done by the inaugural.
But when you say all hell will be
Before
paid,
I
or
take office.
all hell must be paid if they don't release the hostages.
You know what that means, don't you?
Well,
do I have to define it for you? Look, all
No, I know
hell
you're not
will
gonna
break out.
telegraph
If
what-
those hostages aren't back, I don't want to hurt your negotiation. If they're not back by the time I get into office, all hell will break out in the Middle East. And it will not be good for Hamas, and it will not be good, frankly, for anyone. All hell will break out. I don't have to say anymore, but that's what it is.
So here's what happened. According to Israeli newspaper Haaretz, mind you, this is Israeli newspaper, last Friday evening, 10th of January to be precise, 3 days after Witkoff spoke to reporters in Trump's presence, Witkoff was in Qatar, as he had told reporters. He called war criminal and Israeli terrorist Benjamin Netanyahu from Qatar. Witkoff told Netanyahu to come and see him in his new office in Israel the next day, which is Saturday, as he planned to visit Israel. Netanyahu's associates, according to Haaretz, told Witkoff that the war criminal was in the middle of Shabbat, the weekly Jewish ritual when they tend to take a break from work. Witkoff, according to this newspaper, was in no mood to accept any excuse from Netanyahu's office. The newspaper said that Witkoff was behaving like a landlord who had arrived to collect his rent and was determined to achieve his desired objective. Witkoff's blunt reaction took Netanyahu's associates by surprise. He explained to them in his own style that Shabbat was of no interest to him. The fact that Witkoff himself is a Jew and has amassed hundreds of millions of dollars from his real estate business, Netanyahu couldn't have played his anti-Semitic card against him. Like an obedient student, Netanyahu turned up at Witkoff's office the very next day, before Witkoff returned to Qatar to seal the deal. Witkoff isn't a diplomat. Therefore, he doesn't talk like a diplomat. In fact, he has no interest in diplomatic manners and diplomatic protocols. If you speak to any politician in Israel and the US who know him, they will tell you that Witkoff is a businessman who wants to reach a deal quickly and charges ahead, and usually aggressively. And this is precisely what he did. It is ironic that war criminal Blinken projected himself as the chief US diplomat, but conducted in a manner that would put even the worst terrorist on this planet to shame. Even after the deal was announced, Netanyahu continued to drag his feet and created the Hamas bogey once again to delay its implementation. He said that Hamas had added few more demands, and this had prevented him to seek the deal's ratification from his cabinet. The reality was that Netanyahu didn't want to lose Ben-Gvir and Smotrich from his cabinet, as they made it absolutely clear that they wouldn't support the ceasefire. Netanyahu didn't want this government to fall and be out of power. This terrorist is already facing serious corruption charges. Once out of power, he could end up in his own jail. But Trump was once again adamant, as Witkoff made it clear to Netanyahu that he was not Biden or Blinken who would parrot his lies. As I said in my last video, Hamas had accepted this deal in July last year. But Biden and Blinken kept on repeating Netanyahu's lies to justify the continuation of Israel's genocidal campaign in Gaza. Watch this Palestinian journalist who has been following the ceasefire talks all these months. Journalist Muhammad Shahada was speaking to Democracy Now!
The terms of the agreement, it is literally word for word. I read the whole text very carefully. It's word for word, the same text as the one that was produced by Israel's own team on the 27th of May 2024, so about 7 to 8 months ago. Hamas accepted it on July 2nd. Hamas was informed by mediators that the Israeli team gave a positive response as well. Netanyahu immediately rejected it as soon as Hamas's answer was given and imposed 4 conditions that his own generals, his own advisors, his own negotiators said that these conditions are impossible and render a deal unfeasible, but he insisted on them. The Biden administration immediately took a very easy approach. They decided to absolve themselves of any responsibility for refusing or failing to pressure Netanyahu by rewriting history. That's what a very senior Israeli security official told me recently in November. He said Biden's team is engaging in a shameful attempt to rewrite history, basically gaslighting, putting all blame on Hamas so that it sounds that they tried their best with Netanyahu, they got him to accept, and Hamas is to blame. The other thing is that mediators and Israel's own negotiating team have been begging Biden's team for months to name and shame Netanyahu, believing that it can create some domestic pressure on him. Biden refused consistently. We know yesterday in the Times of Israel, it came out citing Israeli negotiators that Blinken, when he used the narrative of saying Netanyahu accepted, Hamas rejected, it threw a wrench in the negotiations and collapsed them. That's what an Israeli negotiator himself said. So in a way, we had a consistent effort by Biden's team to cover up and buy time for the unfolding genocide in Gaza.
So Witkoff forced Netanyahu to accept a plan that this war criminal had previously rejected in the past. The current ceasefire deal is a victory for Hamas, as they maintained their stand that there will not be any ceasefire deal until Israel agrees to release Palestinian hostages and withdraw from Gaza. Netanyahu has had to agree to both their demands. Israeli forces may not leave Gaza in one go, but in multiple stages. But they will have to withdraw. That's a key part of the deal. This would not have been possible with genocidal Joe and barbaric Blinken at the helm. These criminals are destined to rot in hell, thanks to their karma. Rest assured. What had given Netanyahu false hopes was Trump's all hell will break loose comments. He thought it was meant for Hamas. Indeed, Trump had warned Hamas. But he had also said that it will not be a good news for Hamas and it will not be good news for anyone. That anyone was Netanyahu and his gang. No wonder Netanyahu's PR team is in a state of shock, as some of them told Israeli TV channel this week. One, Yotam Zimri, told Channel 14, and I quote, "So all his people have been lying. It's a big disappointment," end quote. Another chap, Yinon Magal, he told Channel 14, and I quote, "Trump talks about hell and in the meantime sends his envoy to sign a deal. It's a deal whose impact will be very difficult. That's the truth," end quote. Either way, this is a great news, and Trump must be applauded for using his power to end Israeli barbarism. Let's hope that people in Gaza are able to breathe a sigh of relief from this Sunday when the ceasefire comes into effect. That's it from me. Thank you very much for your support.
Thanks for watching my video. If you are not subscribed, you are new, please subscribe my channel. Allah Hafiz.